hear myself through my headphones. Yes, man. Like, I feel real good about this right now.
Pay attention, because you are now listening to Permission to Speak Freely.
I'm going to just start off. I'm going to paint the picture, right? Tish's birthday was yesterday. So Tish's birthday was yesterday. Mm-hmm. We did an episode yesterday too. I'm not sure what's going to happen to the episode. For the entity that we did it with, if you are listening to the episode, I'm going to talk to y'all on the back end about it. We're going to have a conversation. We don't know what's going to happen to that episode yet, but we did an episode. So Tish, she had fun, you know, so she might or might not have a hangover, right? So that's the first part. And she's just coming straight out of a I'm snitching on you, Tish. And she just came straight out of a blackout, right? And not like blackout drunk, but blackout like actual, like California is horrible. Like blackout,
he said California, right? The whole California. Yeah. The whole California. Yep.
And then we have a guest, right? And we're going to get into all things her. So it doesn't there's no need for an intro, just so y'all know. But we do have Lieutenant Commander Alexis Travis on our podcast, who we've been wanting to have on here for a while. So I'm super happy to have you here, man. And we're going to get into a whole lot of stuff. I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy it. Hey, just so y'all know, again, like this was something we wanted to do anyway, but she kind of came through for us faster than we expected. So we're going to get it in. And she's a little sick too. She's a little under the weather too. So when y'all hear them voice scratches and stuff like that, y'all kind of know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But I'm glad y'all here with us, and I thank y'all in for another good episode of Permission to Speak Freely. My first question, I want to start with a joke, right? Because it just happened to me, right? The shit just happened to me, right? So I'm going to start with a joke, and I want Tish to answer first. So I'm going to put Tish on the spot a little bit. Tish, it's a joke, jokes only, not no real shit. You know what I mean?
Okay.
What's the worst part of being married? Want me to start off so you know? Yeah. All right. So mine is when I'm looking for something and my wife realizes that I'm looking for something. And like she slows me down because she's trying to help me find it. You know what I mean? So right here in this room, my recording is cold. You know that, Tish. My feet get cold. You know what I'm saying? So I got these warm slippers. So like I had them before I came down here, then I couldn't find them. So I'm looking for them. And now we close to like, you know, coming on. And she like, hey, like she stopped me like mid, like looking for them. Like, hey, what you doing? Looking for something? I said, yeah. Like I'm looking for my slippers. You know, so then she, where you think they could be? Where the last place you left them? Did you check the guest room? I'm like, yo, babe, let me just find these slippers, right? So that's what I mean, right? Nothing serious, right? What's the worst part?
Okay, so for me, right, I'm an LN. Even though I'm retired, I'm always an LN. And as an LN, we learn how to argue both sides, defense and prosecution side. Yeah.
So you the worst part.
I'm telling you. So even when I'm wrong, you know, and a lot of times like men just think different, you know, than women. We a lot of times think emotional. And so there's been times when like I'm wrong and I know I'm wrong about it, but I got to argue it down like I'm not because I have to win the argument. And it's just like, it's not conducive to a marriage to like be wrong, know you wrong, but being like, no, I got to figure out a way to spin this so that I'm right, so I can still get the outcome that I want. It's almost like a form of manipulation.
Yeah. So then you like victimize yourself.
Yes, right? Yeah. Like it's horrible. That's probably his worst part. And then for me, it's just like, then I have to just kind of come after I've won the argument. Now I have to come back and say that I'm sorry because I know I was wrong. Yeah. And I don't like being wrong.
I know when Angeline does that. You know what I mean? I'm like, yo, how come you opened up like a third water when you got 2 bottles of water like already open? Yeah, I'm just going through too much right now. Stressed out, tired. You know, I'm just with the baby. It's just too much going on. Like I'm like, oh shit, she just weaponized her. I can't do anything. She just weaponized her emotions. Like it's over for me. You know what I'm saying? I got to get out of this conversation because anything else, I'm like not sensitive to like her actually being tired and all this real stuff going on. So I'm like, all right, I guess I just like put all the waters in one bottle and like, we'd be done with it. What about you, man?
See, there's the sickness. I think the worst part of being married for me is I was like an absolute gremlin before I got married. I was like a come home, like eat salads like straight out of the bag from the supermarket. Like I had like one bowl, one plate, and like I would eat off of them, rinse them, put them in the dish rack, use them again. Like I was an absolute like bachelor frog. And now I have to do like dishes. I cook nice meals. My husband cooks nice meals. Like I got domesticated. I was pretty feral before. And sometimes like if he has to work later and the kids are asleep or whatever, I like to revert to gremlin mode just to remind myself of like there was a time when I just ate cereal like straight out of the box, and that was fine.
Yeah. But my wife got those gremlins. College ways. Yeah, my wife I call it college ways because I never went to like formal college. I got my degree, but I never went to formal college. But like she got those dorm ways to me sometimes. Like, babe, like what's happening here?
That's what it is. It's like you're sitting in the dorm and it's like you want it to be a futon. You want like bad TV on and you're going to eat like right out of the packaging. So good.
bad TV is always so good. So, hey, ma'am, like how are you right now?
Right this second?
Yeah, right this second.
Oh, I'm exhausted. We've had the plague going around and I've got 2 young ones. So we went, one of the young ones got sick. They gave it to the grownups. Then the grownups gave it to the other kids. So it's just been like plague central around here. And you'll get really used to this. The fun part about kids is when you and I are sick, we sleep a lot. When kids are sick, they sleep none. They wake up in the middle of the night because they're uncomfortable and they don't understand what's going on. And then you don't sleep. So then you're bored tired. It's great. But we're on the upswing now. So things are getting better. But, if there's some bags under my eyes, I get 2 free checked bags on the airline. You'll just have to forgive these.
I'm still getting used to like other things determining my life schedule, because we got the baby and we got the dog. And he got his own timeline. Like now he's figured out like when he want to go to his room at night, the dog, at 11, he's standing in front of us like, hey, what you gonna do? So then we take him to his room. So he on his schedule and then she's on her schedule, and they're both a little unforgiving about each other's schedules, He's a little more forgiving than her, but yeah. So I'm still getting used to like, damn, like I don't really control my life.
Yeah.
It's rough.
No more.
Yeah. I don't know when that adjustment stops, but it's not anytime in the next 4 years because mine's 4 and she still calls the shots most of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, so I follow you on most social media, right? Oof. And you did a lot of stuff in your life, so I get on, like, for instance, like it's like one social media, somebody, they called you some name about like an unathletic person. I forgot what the definition was, right?
Oh, they called me a NARP.
Yeah, NARP, right? And I never heard. It was like, what is it? A non-athletic something person?
Regular person.
Yeah, non-athletic regular person, right? That was, I never heard of a NARP, right? But like, you went to like kind of like prove, like bust their ass. I'm going to say bust their ass. So you kind of bust their ass a little bit. You busted them a little bit and was like, no, I actually like did like 15 marathons. I did these triathlons here. I did this here. So like at some time in your life, like you were an athlete.
Yeah.
Right. And so when was that? Was that college or was that while you were in the Navy?
That was my first couple of years in the Navy. So athlete's probably a really generous term. Most of my athletic accomplishments have been completely out of spite. I had someone, basically say, "Oh, you can't do it," when I was a junior in college. And nothing this is like a cheat code for anyone that ever works for me or with me, is if you say, "I don't think you can do this," I'm going to do it 10 times now. So I ran that half marathon and realized I really liked long distance running. And so I spent from then, so it's probably from when I was like 21, 22, right up until I had kids. I ran my last full marathon while I was pregnant with my second kid.
Yeah. So you get motivated by negative reinforcement.
Yeah, I do, which is not very healthy, I don't think. But well, and I really like to think of it as type 2 fun. I like the kind of fun where you're not actually having fun at the time, but it's fun to tell people that you did it later. Like it's fun. It's fun to look at the pictures. It's fun to think about. That's how I would describe kind of long distance running. I think you don't actually, for the level I run at, you don't have to be an incredibly good runner. You just have to be really, really stubborn.
Yeah.
And between spite and being stubborn, I can get a lot of things done.
Negative reinforcement is what drives me too. Like you got to, like if you tell me I can't do something, I'm definitely going to do it.
Yeah.
Positive reinforcement don't do that for me. Like my wife is different. Like hers is like, if you tell her she can't do it, she not going to do it. Like you know, she just going to fall into whatever you said. We just had a conversation with her and her mom about it. So she's more of if you motivate her as she's going and you give all that positive reinforcement, that's what gets her going. But yeah, so I saw that. And how long have you been in now?
10 years.
Okay. So 10 years. And
I'm getting up there.
Yeah, you're about to be an OG. You're about to be an OG in the game. I was, saying I was young in the game with my 17 years. We did somebody else's podcast. I'm like, man, I got 17 years in, man. I feel young because we were talking to a retired fleet master. Those guys 30, 34.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I feel young.
Yeah.
He's like, nah, you getting old in the game,
Right?
And I just realized I got some gray hairs coming in too. But
I swear I have a couple. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a rough time.
It's tragic.
Man. I'm looking at it and I'm trying. I'm like, yo, what I'm gonna do? Am I just going, thug it out?
I used to cut them or pluck them out, but they always came back with more friends. It's like they multiply when you kind of pluck them out.
And that's what I noticed.
Yeah,
they like wolves. Like you ever saw when somebody scare a wolf away? That's the worst thing to do. Like you come back in like 20 minutes. It's like 40 of them
with all the homies.
So let's go all the way back, man.
All right.
I think I put too much energy on all the way. Let's go back a little bit So where are you from?
Georgia. So I was born in Atlanta and raised just outside of Atlanta. Spent some summers in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that the Navy was going to be a career?
No way. I originally went to school for film. I wanted to work in film, which I think would have eventually ended up in some kind of like advertising marketing, because that's still what I really like now. And when I was a freshman in college, my sister-in-law's brother, so technically not anything to me, but he kind of filled a big brother role for me, died, which so he had served a tour in Afghanistan with the Army. That tour had gone really badly for a number of reasons, and he came back with a lot of trauma. But it was early 2000s. PTSD was not mainstream yet, right? The idea of mental health and seeking mental health was really, really stigmatized at the time. And he struggled with that. And through that and some other things, he ended up dying. And I took it really hard. And to our point about negative reinforcement, I kind of took that as a nobody's doing anything. And with the absolute arrogance that only, an 18-year-old can have, I was like, I'm going to fix it. And so I spent the next few years figuring out what I wanted to do, how I thought that I could, join the military and figure out what was going on. And that's how I ended up in the Supply Corps. I saw it as an opportunity to kind of dip my toes in a lot of different communities and see what's working and what's not across kind of a broad spectrum of the military, so that hopefully I could make a difference.
So you came in with the spirit to advocate. So you kind of just fulfilling like your motivation in the beginning of all this anyway.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It was definitely pushed into high gear when I ended up with mental health issues. But pretty much from day one, my goal was to be an advocate. And I was here as a Supply Corps officer because I like the work, but mostly because it got me into those spaces that I wanted to be in.
So what does this look like in the time that like you first joined? Because I know social media wasn't what it is today, right? So social media in the last like 5-6 years, I've seen like a bigger boom in military people on social media advocating and stuff like. But when you first joined, you joined in with this mission already wanting to make this impact. What does that look like for you outside of social media?
Yeah, so especially my first few years, which, as you said totally correctly, is like way before social media was anything other than us taking like, pictures of our lunches and putting a lot of filters on them. I really thought that the best thing I could do was learn the job and try and figure out how to be a good leader. I personally blamed my brother's leadership a lot, and I wanted to see like, okay, where is the disconnect between what I thought should have happened in this circumstance and who I can be? And so I actually spent a lot of my first few years really digging into like chief mentorship, because, especially I was with the CBs first, and they're very, very heavy on, chiefs being in charge of the people. And I wanted to know what that secret sauce was. I wanted to know how they were thinking through things. And I was able to do some, kind of, we'll call it tactical level, like, human level stuff. I had a sailor who underwent a mental health crisis when I'd been in the Navy for like less than a year. I mean, I was brand new at my first command. And my senior chief called me at like 6 a.m. and, so-and-so is in the hospital, is self-admitted. And I drove straight there and I sat with him and his wife, and, we got a plan together with his family and with the doctors. And I remember my department head at the time was furious. She called me and she was, we're going to hit you with dereliction of duty. We're going to hit you with not being at your assigned place of duty. You're supposed to be at the office. And I had a great senior chief who was at the hospital with me, with our sailor. And he basically said, you're right where you need to be. And he's like, there'll probably be consequences. And for me, that was one of those moments where it was like, I'm here to be a really good supply corps officer, but that's like 1A. And 1 is I'm here to do right by people that in a way that I feel like people didn't do right by my brother. And so I stayed at the hospital, and I did get hit with some disciplinary action for that. But, that sailor retired last year, and he's healthy and he's whole and he's still with his daughter. So, not to put too fine a point on it. I don't know where that counseling shit is, but I sure know where that sailor is.
Right.
And for me, that's, people want to do the big advocacy, right? They want to do the splashy stuff. I want to do the splashy stuff. I want to write policy, right? I want to affect the big things. But what I really learned in my first couple of years was where you have the most impact is right at home, right? It's the people you see at quarters, it's the people you check in with. Right. And that's what I spent my first few years really digging into.
Yeah. And it's rough that leaders have to make those types of decisions in the first place, right? Where it's like, I know I'm doing the right thing by this person, but am I doing the right thing in accordance with whatever naval or command instruction or something like that, guidance policy? And am I doing the right thing there? You know, and I've been through that, with sailors when it comes to like medical issues and them having to go to the ER versus sending them to command medical first and stuff like that. It's like, I took them to the ER, and I'm so glad you had that senior chief there. Like, hey, it's not a lot of people, not a lot of people get that type of mentorship early where it's like, hey, it might be consequences, but it is what it is. I'm having those conversations. Me personally, I am personally right now having those conversations with like chiefs. Like, hey, it might be some consequences, but it is what it is. As long as your heart was in it, like eat it, And a lot of us don't eat it, unfortunately. Like we want this squeaky clean record and reputation. And a lot of times, based off my own personal experience, people don't really respect that at the end of it all. Like they respect the backbone. They respect you having a backbone and sometimes bucking things a little bit more than they respect you kind of going along and getting along.
Right.
For sure.
It makes you stand out a little bit as a leader.
Well, and I think there's consequences either way, which is how I remember him explaining it to me, is like, you can face professional consequences here. And he was like, it might be counseling shit. Maybe it'll be like a what is it called? Nip lock, right? Maybe maybe they'll really get mad to try and prove a point. He's like, but if you leave, there's still consequences too. That sailor's going to know you left. His family's going to know you left. He's going to tell the other sailors that work for you that you left. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's consequences there too. And I'll say, after staying, my relationship with, my division changed, because they saw that I stayed. They saw that I got in trouble doing the right thing, looking out for one of them. And their willingness to invest in me, their willingness to take risks, to teach me, all of those things really paid off after that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was really risking on the flip side.
Yep.
Right. And I think people only view that the consequences through the professional lens, through there's going to be a bad mark in my record, and not as much through the, there's consequences in the other direction too.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not advocating for people to get LOIs and bad marks, but I've had conversations with people like, oh, what is a LOI? Like, what is it? Okay, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I've had to have those conversations too. Like, sometimes, hey, for the people listening, sorry y'all, but sometimes you got to take that LOI.
Right.
Like, sometimes you got to take that hit. Especially if as a human who you are, as whatever your last name your parents raised you on and all of that, if you're doing the right thing. I ain't talking about street politics, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about your real life, your ethics, and like what kind of makes you who you are. Sometimes you got to do that, and that's what makes, I think, our military special, because we got so many people with their own like really valuable goals and morals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I always when I always get to one of those situations, I always look at it as a should. I look at what I can do. This is what's black and white, because you always got the black and white part of it. This is what is kind of like the right and wrong, but then you have what should I do? And maybe what should I do? What's the right thing? Maybe it doesn't always coincide with what the black and white is. And so like you said, sometimes you just got to do what, is going to have the best effect in the end. And the best effect may not be for Big Navy. it may not be, mission, everybody's so mission driven. It may not be something that is, going to benefit the mission right now, but overall it will benefit the mission, because like you, ma'am, like in your situation, there was probably nothing that sailor would not do for you after that, because they saw that you had their back. And having people being motivated and believing in you and being willing to, stick their neck out and do the work, and not giving you a hard time because they know where your heart is, you can get so much more work done, which contributes to the mission. So
it's a long game versus short game thing.
Right.
I think a lot of times people think of that discipline, or they think of the mission in really, really short term kind of goals. Right. And they forget that investing in people is an investment in that long term.
Absolutely.
So how does the career path progress from, because this was the first command, right?
Yeah.
So how does the career path, so basically I'm asking two questions. For a supply corps officer, how does your career path, what's the progression path for your career? That's the first question I'm asking. And then specifically for you, what was yours?
Yeah. So usually we do a sea tour, like a Divo tour. Then you do something ashore for a couple of years. Then you go back for a department head tour. And then after that, you go to grad school. And then from there, it kind of branches depending on if you're going to go back to a carrier and you're interested in, command, or if you're interested in contracting, it kind of branches from there. So that's the level I'm at. I'm finishing grad school and headed to a carrier. I switched that up a little bit. I did back-to-back sea tours first. I did my Divo tour, and then I went straight into my department head tour. And I specifically did that, for two reasons. Because once again, someone said they didn't think I could succeed in submarines. And I said, watch me succeed in submarines. And so I went straight from the Seabees to the submarine community, partially out of spite. But also for me, so I was 23 when I commissioned, and I knew if I went sea, shore, sea, in kind of that direction, I was going to end up in a bad spot with if I got married, how old I would be when I had time ashore to start thinking about growing a family. And so I took kind of a gamble since I was not dating my now husband at the time. And I stacked all of that sea duty up. I was at sea for about 5 years straight. Right at the beginning, I got married my last year on sea duty, and that bought me 4 or 5 years straight ashore, which to me was like, okay, that gives us time to actually be married. It gives us time to have kids and deal with if there's going to be any issues with having kids, and potentially, a couple of years to get settled as a family before we have to start hitting deployments hard again. And for me, I got really lucky. That worked out. So
yeah, real good. Yeah. So climbing up in the ranks, young officer, moving up. Have you ever had so this one of those dark questions, you know what I mean?
Let's do
but
it.
it kind of has to happen because I watch women navigate through their career all the time and have to deal with men, right? Just us, like men being men. And I used to be a semio, and every time a young woman would come in, my office and talk about like a guy or something, I'm never surprised about the actions of men, right? I'm never like, oh man, he wouldn't do that. Because dudes would do anything. Like if nobody watching, dudes would do any kind of weird thing that you would not expect them to do. If like a bunch of other dudes was around, he's like, yo, I would never ever say nothing to her. And then when everybody else leaves, this dude, so my question is, have you ever had to experience any like overly excited male or like totally totally inappropriate activity from men as you were climbing up in the ranks in your career?
Sure. And I think the important thing to note is that like that 98%, right? Like super high percentage don't do any of those weird things. It's just that really small percentage is so pervasive. That's why it's never surprising. Because I interact with so many incredible men in, across the services. My husband's one, right? And they're great.
Yeah.
But there's always like that one guy at the command who's always, and you're just like, oh, you're hurting the cause for the rest of it. Like we all want this to be different. I've had a couple. I had a particularly traumatic incident at my first command where I got lured into one of our Quonset huts, one of our warehouses, because I thought I was getting some help with something, and the man had different ideas, and used it as an opportunity to try and do some things. And I got really lucky in that instance. One of my junior enlisted, knew that the guy had kind of a bad reputation. And I had said something passively like, oh, he's going to meet me, to just help me figure out how to fix this thing. And he just got bad vibes and ended up following us. And when the guy went to try and do something, he was like, hey, how's it going? And was able to kind of step in and break it up. And it's not always big stuff like that. That was certainly, a learning experience for me. I went from very trusting to a little more calibrated towards being curious, if not downright suspicious about some stuff. And there's been some other instances. I had a senior enlisted on my submarine who ran up and down the length of the submarine, stomping his feet once, yelling, I don't want any more women on my submarine. Which was just like, what did we ever do to you? It was just it was very weird. I had someone slip their number into my coveralls once. So there's been like, from very low level to some very high level stuff where it's just like a constant, like most of them are totally fine, totally safe, great people. And I love working with them, but there's always a weird one or two where it's just like, you either don't want me here or you have weird intentions. It's kind of interesting. Yeah,
it's difficult for guys too, just like that small percentage, like you said, that 1 or 0.1%, it makes it difficult for guys. So one of your TikToks I was kind of following about the door being closed, like when men give, counseling. And you had all these, facts, like you had numbers and things like that. You had numbers, but in the comments, a lot of men were kind of like arguing their perspective based off of like anecdotal information and their experiences, right? And I've been in the experience where I wanted to make sure that I was safe too. We had a little saloon kind of door thing where half of it, opens. And a lot of times I was like, all right, let me keep, this door open. And the craziest thing is it never had to do with like me worried about her or me worrying about me. I never was worried about like the lady like making up a story. It's always about other people that didn't have anything to do with the situation. Oh, I saw such and such going into chief's office. Or I saw such and such going into scene. And that's kind of where it gets kind of weird. So I'm like, all right, let me protect myself in this situation and protect my reputation. Because like people were arguing with you. It sometimes just that process of trying to clear your name is impactful enough to like your time, like on the ship, So I definitely think that it makes it harder for guys to, like, it's not too many, like, I think it's not too many interactions I have with women where like, I'm not like trying to be like, yo, am I like, I'm not like making her uncomfortable. Like it's people that like for instance, like, cause I tell guys like, hey man, you look good today. Like I like, even like on the pod, like now, like talking to Tish, like if Tish come in looking good, I'm gonna say, yo, Tish, you look good. I like, I ain't say it today, T, but you look good, T. But like she got something nice on her, something like that. It's hard to do that now, especially like for me on like social media with like people like, hey, you look beautiful. Cause it's like, is she thinking I'm trying to, cause a lot of people, especially in the Navy, they sprinkle things like that, like a lot, like throughout like years. And I know Tish, you probably know about this too. Like a lot of leaders, they sprinkle. And then like one day it's like just out of nowhere, they like think they got you in the trap.
Yep.
So it's like, I'm like, yo, I don't even want to say it. Cause I don't even want it to seem like I'm trying to do what the last man, might have done. So, and it makes it hard because you're taking a little bit of yourself and your personality away from this interaction, and people could feel it when you're not being genuine.
Yeah,
and
I think so. To the point of that TikTok, I was trying to point out something about the rates of like false accusations versus rates of like male on male assault. Not for the point of trying to say, you have to keep the door open or that neither of these things ever happens, but trying to point out that a lot of people are afraid of something that statistically is, unlikely to happen. Yeah. And they aren't afraid of a lot of other things that statistically are maybe more likely to happen because we tell ourselves these stories and we sort of spook ourselves about how common something is or how likely it is. And that really, I didn't do a great job explaining that in that video, which is why so many people jumped in to apparently defend sexual assault, which was
weird.
It was a weird day in my comment section.
Well, you did you explained it, right? We talked about it on this podcast too, but you explained it right. But it was a fact first feeling kind of conversation at that point. Yeah. It was like you arguing fact against like anecdotal information. Yeah. Like dudes kind of going off like how they feel based off of that. And it's hard to like win on either side. Cause you're like, well, I got the facts here. It's just this, and they like, well,
facts are never going to be my reality. My reality.
Like, and that happens the other way around too. So one of my questions I did have for you is, do you think it's any value in anecdotal information?
Sure. I think one of the things that I'm reading a lot about right now is the value of gossip, which sounds really weird, but anyone who's been at the smoke pit knows the value of the little bits of information that get dropped here and there, right? That's like 90% of the reason to smoke in the Navy is just so you can sit there and just listen. Not that I do that. If you see me at the smoke pit,
I'm trying to find some information. Exactly.
So there's value in gossip. And I think a lot of this anecdotal evidence is basically large scale gossip, right? It's we would never know these things happen, and we would never be able to connect with people and know what is my experience versus what is our shared experience if we don't talk about those things. I think what really gets lost in that is we set it up to be combative, where because this is my reality, it must be reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are really hard to distinguish, because just like, you're afraid of, oh, well, someone, if I close this door, they might say they saw Chief and whoever going in here. I think for me, the equivalent of that is when I'm trying to just be nice to people, just generally pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
About 1 time out of 50, someone thinks I'm flirting with them because they've, and I think, I think men might have that experience some. It's the, hey, how's you looking good today? The uniform's looking sharp, right? And people make those mistakes. And so I think we do this thing where we take our reality and we either think that it's very personal to us, or we say, well, because it's true for me, it must be true for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And feelings never, facts never win in the face of feelings. And so it's super hard if you have experienced these things, because people are going to say, well, I know you're not flirting. And it's like, right. But it's happened enough for me to be skittish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it comes down to. But it tells us something about reality. It tells us how people are feeling, what they're perceiving. And it does give us information about how often is this happening? How often are people really afraid of this? Even if it's not real, if people are afraid of it, that's still valuable information.
Right.
Yeah. And I think in the Navy, not just even with the dealings of men and women, I think in the Navy, like with the perception of the career, with the perception of like some organizations like the Chiefs Mess, I think like a lot of that anecdotal information then grew legs,
Mm-hmm.
You asked like, like example, I was filling in for my CMC a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago at this point now. And then I was doing a zone inspection, and one of the cleaners had just joined the Navy like 3 weeks, ago, and hated it. It hates the Navy, right? Like got out of boot camp 3 weeks ago, got to the ship, hated it. And I'm like, hey man, like, why do you hate the Navy? Like, let's kind of like get into it. And just he could not put a finger on like the actual, so he could have just not been telling me, or but he could not actually tell me why. And I'm sure he probably hates it because he went to a division, and like the people that he talked to the most probably hates it.
Hated the Navy, yeah.
And they probably either had a reason to hate it, or they inherited the hate.
Yeah.
They inherited the hate too.
Right.
And it's like, damn, like so what I wound up doing was talking to him about when I was a junior seller, and like where I came from, and like, how I like would have had a hard time adjusting to like being in the military if it wasn't for like these third classes that I worked for, and wound up like, I'm not going to say like I turned him around, but I made him a believer that it's not all what you think it is. Like, let's just have these normal, natural conversations, but a lot of our perception now is just it's, if somebody says like a chief did something, it's the whole mess, right? That's kind of what they always say. Like, hey, if it's a news story about a chief, it's Chiefs, it's the whole mess. So now you get this, nobody is going to say like, hey, the Chiefs mess sucks, but Tisha is incredible. Like, now it's going to be like, yo, the Chiefs mess sucks. Chiefs suck, and you got to deal with that. But it's like, all right, let's receive that info, like you said about the anecdotal information. Let's receive that, and then let's kind of dig and see where some of that comes from, because it's a lot of realness inside of these statements, and they ain't went nowhere in a while. You know what I mean? They just been hanging there, like,
right.
We ain't turned the tides. So, all right, so you got your master's degree, right?
Hold on. I have a question that just kind of comes out of there. So, what is the biggest piece of gossip that has kind of gotten back around to you that was about you? Because it's always funny to me when I hear something that was a gossip that was about me, and it's like, really now?
I did that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I've definitely had a few of those. I think probably the best one, and it falls in line with what you're talking about. I I had a very rough relationship with my CMC for a little while on my sub, rightfully so. I was somewhat combative with my chief, and he was trying to, be on the chief's side. And we kind of got things settled down, but I knew I needed to invest in that relationship, partly because I needed him to sign my qual card. Let's be honest. And I happened to notice one day that he was taking, he was doing NC PACE, right? Like the courses you can take underway. And he was taking statistics, and he did not look like he was having a good time with it. And I happened to have taken a lot of statistics in college. And so I was like, hey, do you want me to tutor you in this? I can help you through this course. And because I thought, a little bit of goodwill, right? Get the rapport going, help him, everything goes smoother when the chief's mess is on your side. And so we would sit in cruise mess, and and I kind of tried to think about some of those perception things. So, we only ever met when we had like all of the study stuff, and we were on opposite sides of the table in cruise mess, really public. And I'm a chop, so it was one of my spaces, right? But we only used it when it was open to the rest of the crew. And we'd go through, and I'd help him with his courses and his, everything up, studying up for the tests and stuff. And we'd been at that, I don't know, half a deployment maybe. And he was learning statistics, and my relationship with the chief's mess was improving, and all things were going really well. And then he pulled me aside one day, and he's like, well, we have to stop studying. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, someone thinks that we're dating. And I was just like, there could be nothing more boring and less romantic than sitting on cruise mess studying statistics, like the driest subject on earth. But it was one of those things where it's like, it's a guy, it's a girl. And once the rumor starts, there's no way to do anything except totally say, well, I can't help you anymore or be seen in your general vicinity, because that rumor is going to spread. But it was just like, nobody was going to take it seriously. Nobody who mattered was going to take it seriously. The XO knew that at best we tolerated each other, right? CEO knew that, Chiefs Mess knew that, everybody knew the truth. But someone decided that was their perspective, and that was the rumor that started going around the ship. And so it was just like, well, okie dokie.
And that really sucks, because you really were not like, it really was not happening. But how do you prove that you're not? And is it even worth it? Because it's like, you gotta, you have your reputation at the end of the day, like, who you are, so that just really sucks.
Yeah. I've never seen that situation play out and a rumor didn't start. Ever. Yeah. Like I've never seen a one-on-one, like kind of man-woman partnership, like whether it's studying for ESWAS or like working on something, spades partners, whatever they are, right? I've never seen it play out successfully without a rumor. Like
always,
which is lonely. It is. I think the problem is, and this is something I talk about sometimes on my social medias, where it's like, the problem is that just makes it really lonely. There were 6 women on my submarine, and I'll be honest, just because we are 6 women on a submarine does not mean we have personalities that make us want to be friends. Right? But like I don't actually think you could have come up with 6 people with more diverse interests and like hobbies, and like we had nothing in common, most of us. But I did have stuff in common with some of the other officers who happen to be men. But it's exactly what you said, where it's like, man, they can't be my Liberty buddies, because I'm a married woman, and if it gets around that I go out on Liberty with the same guy or 2 every couple, then it's going to be a thing.
It's crazy.
And so you end up just like, well, I'll just stay on the ship, or I'll go out with this person that I don't really like, and it's not as much fun, and it's not as, it's not the experience I wanted it to be. But and that's, and I happened to be in Diego Garcia, so mostly the wardroom went all together, and that wasn't a big deal. But it's just like,
it's like high school.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's just like high school. Like, how are we adults and we're still doing this?
Never goes away.
a lot of walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When it come to man-woman relationships in the Navy, period.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So back to the masters though, because you just got a master's, right?
I graduate in May.
Okay. And that's where you were in school for in this time period of being in school. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, so now you're going back to a ship. How long were you in school for the master's?
2 years. So
Okay.
Supply Corps requires all of us to have master's degrees before we make 05. And every year they take like 10 people and they send us, instead of sending us to Navy postgrad, which is usually a year, they send us to civilian programs. So in a really strange twist of COVID fate, I got picked up for the civilian scholarship. So I've spent 2 years at school hanging out, pretending to be a civilian. It's been fun.
That's pretty cool. So when did you have to put your uniform on?
Let's see. I put my uniform on for my promotion because I put on 04 while I was here. And I put on my uniform if I go to medical. That's about it.
So how did you enjoy it?
It's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, 10 out of 10. No, yeah, it's been really cool. Anyone who gets the opportunity to take free money from the Navy, especially if you get to play civilian while you do it, take it and run. It, for me, has been such a great mental break. Where it's like I got to step away, I got to get a little perspective. It makes me really nervous to get back into the 7:30 muster.
Yeah.
Whole rigmarole. It makes me nervous to try and get back into that. But no, it's been amazing. 1,000 out of 10.
Who pays for this degree? The Navy?
Mm-hmm.
Damn, and it's just a part of the career path.
Yep. I know. It's such a hookup.
It is.
That's pretty cool.
So during that time, what were some things that you actually missed about the Navy?
Oh my gosh. I missed the camaraderie. I think there's a shared language, there's shared experience, there's shared understanding that I have just really not found with a lot of my classmates. Some of that's because my classmates are a lot younger than me. So there's also just like a lifestyle mismatch.
Right.
But I think just like, the idea of travel, the idea of work that is hard, but there's like meaning behind it. I really miss a lot of that. I miss the camaraderie. I've tried really hard to stay in touch with a lot of the people that I served with, especially the ones who are still local, and meet up with them when I can, just because I think that sense of community has been really hard for me to find elsewhere.
That's so true about the lingo, because I have a cousin who, he was in the Navy. We actually retired. We went in the Navy at the same time and we retired at around the same time too, like months apart. And we were actually home at one point for Christmas at the same time. And our family always does like this Christmas Eve dinner. And so everyone's there and he and I are there and we're just talking Navy. And next thing you know, like we turn around and everybody's quiet because they're like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Because we're just talking acronyms and, so everybody else is like, they're trying to like hear the conversation and maybe try to like understand our world, but they're just really lost. Like, what? I have not understood anything that y'all, like even just talking about going to chow. They don't know what the hell that means because that's just our lingo. So that was just so funny how everybody was just quiet. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I always think about that whenever I hear somebody talking about the lingo. So
yeah.
So orders negotiation, right? I saw that was a kind of a big thing in your life, right? Like whatever. Why was that a big thing in your life? That's the question.
Oh man. Yeah. So like I said, after coming out of grad school is kind of a pivotal moment, I think, for a lot of supply officers, because if you take a carrier tour right now, that's seen as like a really good stepping stone to 05 billets, potentially 06. And there's a lot of other work that can be done because we have a lot of like subspecialties inside of being a supply officer, like contracting, acquisitions, things like that. And you sort of pick which route you're going to go coming out of grad school to some extent. And for me, this is super embarrassing, but when I was an ensign, I learned what a PAL does, or a PAS does. I learned what the primary assistants on an aircraft carrier do. And I thought that was the coolest thing. I was like 24. I had not like admiral stars in my eyes, but just like, that's so cool, stars in my eyes. You get to just like run all of this stuff for this huge floating city. And I was like, I really want to do that. That seems like a challenge. It seems like fun. It seems like you get to impact a lot of people's lives. And so this was like my one shot kind of to get those kinds of orders. I'm at the right rank. I'm at the right experience level. And it's been a goal for 10 years. And so it's sort of the, I don't know what the polite version of pee or get off the pot is, but there you go.
That's what it is.
And yeah, right. And so, and what complicated that for me is that I've got a husband, I've got 2 little kids. And so we needed to find the right set of orders. It's not just give me any set of orders. Because when I was single, it was like, I can do whatever I want. I'll pick orders in Japan. I can do a boat that's home port shifting. I can do whatever. And that's a lot harder to do when you have, so my husband is a physical therapist, so he has to get licensed and, build a practice wherever we go. And so can't be moving all the time. Hard for us to be overseas, not impossible, but, we want our kids to start school. We're going to start school on this next tour. And so you want to be somewhere where you feel comfortable with that. And so we spent a lot of time looking at what's the right ship going to be. And then for me, I really aggressively pursued it. I found my perfect set of orders. And I called all of the people that worked on the ship because in the supply corps, you have to do something called socialize your orders once you're in 04. So you have to be selected by your boss for every set of orders from here on out. And so I called the person who's in the job right now. I called the person who's going to be in the job when I was going to get there. I called their boss. I called everybody, and tell me what the job is about. I want to tell you about me. I want to tell you about why I want to be here. Here's my record. And so when the time came, the detailers got to just be like, we need someone in this spot. This person really wants to be there. And so I got the orders. It all really lined up to be, I'm doing the hard job. I'm doing the job that I've wanted to do for a long time. And we're doing it in a way and in a location that my family can still feel supported, which is a huge priority for me right now. So,
yeah. Now, in a way, though, you still go from, it's still going to be a bit of a transition from either like cold to warm or something, because the kids not going to see you as much as they saw you when you were in school, right?
Right.
Have you done anything to prepare them for that already?
Yeah. Right now we're doing a lot of books. So my kids are almost 3 and 4. They're really close together. And we're doing a lot of books that explain what the military is, that explain that, well, there's one that's, love is stretchy. And it talks about no matter how far I get from you, our love always stretches. And we haven't introduced the concept of deploying to them yet. Yeah. Just because 6 months is a long, what am I at? 6, 8, 9? I can't remember. I get there in July. And okay. I know we deploy sometime after I get there. I don't know the ship schedule, but that's a long time for a kid. And I don't think, kind of giving them the concept right now would really help. But we're trying to lay the base of like, even, when I talk to you on the phone, that's still talking to you. And when when I'm not here, I still love you. And when I go away, there's always a good reason. So we're trying to sort of bring those concepts in kid-friendly ways. And then probably the most popular one that I've done is I found these QR code stickers. And when the first time you scan it, it takes you to a website that allows you to record a video. And then every time after that, when you scan it, it'll pull the video up on your phone.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. And so I bought a bunch of those and I stuck them in a bunch of my kids' books. And then I read the books on the video. And so now with very little effort, my husband, at bedtime can just scan a QR code and then he and the kids can read a book with me. And there's some nonprofits that do similar things. The QR codes just worked out for me because I could buy a lot of them off Amazon and kind of knock it all out.
Yeah.
I hope that helps, as like a way to have mom kind of nearby.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is dope.
Yeah. Now, as a supply car officer, right? So Navy gets you in here, you get the masters, you're getting your orders to the carrier. What do you owe the Navy?
So I owe the Navy 3 years back for my 2 years masters. So I'll graduate in May 24. So I'm under OblaServe until May 27. The way it kind of works out with my orders, because I'm on 2-year sea duty orders. So I'll have to take 2 year orders after that. So then to match obligation to orders, I'll end up really owing them until May of 28.
Okay. And do you already know if you're going to ride this out to retirement, or you don't know yet?
No way.
It's always good to say. It's always good to say. People listening, the leaders are listening. You never know.
I know the leaders are listening, and I want the leaders to hear me say that I don't know, because we get trapped in this. I have to say I'm a lifer, or they're gonna take that award away. They're gonna take that collateral away. They're not gonna give me the number 1 EP because they're gonna give it to someone who says they're a lifer, right? Where it's more valuable. And I want people to hear me say that I don't know. And I've been really honest with a lot of leaders about that. And it has gone badly for me sometimes. I've always said, I'll stay as long as it makes sense and the jobs are interesting. And now I'll stay as long as it makes sense for my family and the jobs are interesting. And I feel like I'm doing good work. If there ever comes a time, I have a friend who just got out because he's in the Army. And he was just at a point in his career where he wasn't going to really be leading soldiers anymore. He was going to be doing paperwork. And it's not where his heart was at. His heart was never in the paperwork, the administration and logistics of the Army. His heart was in his soldiers. And so it wasn't anything personal. It wasn't like I hate the Army. It was just like my time here is done. It's not meaningful work anymore. And so that's kind of it for me, is like, I want the jobs to be meaningful. I got to put the health of my family and my kids and my husband first. Yeah. And as long as we're doing that, I would love to stay. I want that retirement paycheck for sure. And I think with rank and with experience, I will continue to have more kind of clout behind the advocacy work I do, which is really important to me. People take an email from a lieutenant with a certain amount of seriousness, but they take an email from a lieutenant commander with a little bit more, right? And a commander with a little bit more. And if what I really want to do is make big policy impact, getting that rank and time kind of matters.
And the one part you mentioned about just performing in a job that you're in, like it resonates with me right now. I just picked up Command Senior Chief, and every
congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate it. And every CMC, I talk to, all like these guys are mentors of mine, and they got the greatest intentions, but they always ask me, like, and I guess it matters for your career path in this environment. They like, well, what do you ultimately want to do? Because that matters, for the orders you get and stuff like that.
Sure.
And like, I've always feel real weird because like, I don't know, I'm like, I don't know like how high I want to climb or whatever. I just know that the job that I go do, I want to like do the best that I could do at that job, and then if I get offered to do another job, or if I have to choose another job, I want to do the best at that job. If that takes me all the way to being a MCPON, then I'll be a MCPON still trying to do the best at the job. But that's just the way my brain works. I don't have like this whole pathway, like, planned out, and this whole thing planned out. It's ambitious. I just want to do great at the job that I'm in, and then whatever kind of comes next. So that resonates with me a whole lot. I mean, unfortunately for like, thinkers like that, the Navy is about like creating this pathway sometime in your career and kind of knowing how it's going to progress and already having all this stuff laid out. So you got like, so sometimes when I get like overwhelmed, like, hey dude, like, what you want to do? Like, what's your next command? I'm like, yo, let me go to this. Let me go to my first command and do a really great job there. Let me see how it is. Let me kind of get the lay of the land, and and we'll work it from there. Now, I do want to talk about social media, right? So we were talking about you getting your master's degree during this time as like a civilian a little bit, right? Semi-civilian, getting military. Is this the time when the social media started like popping off, like blowing up? Like, was it in your time as a civilian?
No. So it was, I ended up getting delayed 1 year starting my master's just because some COVID messed up some budget numbers, I think. And I ended up in a stash billet where I was working with the Warrior Toughness program back when they were rolling that out. So download that app. What? And there were a bunch of people. There were a bunch of people on my team who smoked, and so they would go down to the smoke pit, take their smoke breaks. But for me, it was like there wasn't a lot to do in that 15 minutes. That happened like 3 times a day. And so I wanted to be outside, and so I would sit outside because I was in Newport, so it's beautiful summer weather there. So I would sit outside far enough away from the smoke pit that I wasn't covered in smoke, because as much as I want the gossip, I can't handle it. Can't hang. And I just thought like it was right at the beginning of Reels and TikTok kind of really taking off. And I thought like, these are funny. I can be funny, and maybe I can be funny for like a reason. And pretty early on, I'd been at it for like maybe a month or two, and I had a reel go viral, like over 1 million views.
Yeah.
And that was for me like, oh, I can, like, I had been making the videos just for like my friends, like, inside jokes or jokes about what it's like to be a sailor. And I was like, oh, I can reach people. I can actually put out information, and it can impact people. And that was when I was like, I wonder if I could do this. I wonder if I could take this seriously and get better at it and actually do something here. So I sort of fell backwards into it, but it's been fun.
You remember what went viral?
Yeah. So it was me joking about singing into a microphone about being really excited about something. And it was, so in 2020, the Navy released a new NAVSA P45, P46. And one of the things that they changed was they authorized the storage of expressed human breast milk on board ships.
Yeah, I saw that video of yours.
Yeah. So that is probably my proudest accomplishment in the Navy to date, because I had just had my kid, and I was sitting in an office, and I had seen somebody on some Facebook group. I can't remember, but they were trying to keep pumping. They were on a ship that was in the yards. They wanted to keep pumping, trying to take it home at night. And they were trying to figure out how to store it. And they couldn't get the electricians to clear like a mini fridge.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't, and food service wouldn't let them store it. Medical wouldn't let them store it. And it was this whole back and forth in the comments of, well, you're supposed to be allowed to. Yeah, but nobody knows what the right way to do it is, blah, blah, blah. And like, as I was reading through that, I happened to overhear my office mate talking about these revisions to the food service manual. And I literally was just like, hey, can we just write a paragraph that says that this is authorized? And they were like, yeah, send me the email. So I did a little research, and I wrote an email, and verbatim, they just copy pasted my email and stuck it right in the instruction. And I know that that's true because there's a typo in it. Because I had like a newborn, I had like a 6-week-old daughter or something. So I was like totally sleep deprived, just like typing random things in there. And so I made a video just being like how excited I was that the Navy had made this change that makes so much sense, right? It's in line with our other policies, and it just is like good common sense that provides commands an easy way to help women out. And I have zero idea why it struck such a chord, but it struck a chord. And the comments were evenly split between women. It was almost entirely women who were like, this is so cool. This makes so much sense. And men who were like, oh, how dare they be breastfeeding and on a ship? Women who have babies belong in the home. And I was just like, it was like my first big experience of like, going viral has its own set of consequences.
Right.
Yeah. It's like a roller coaster for like from what I've seen from like some of our videos. It's not like nowhere near like 1 million or nothing, but like the beginning from what I've seen, it's like super positive. Like I see people like, oh, you guys could go.
And then
like you wake up in the morning, like, oh shit.
Yeah.
what happened? Like it's just totally dogpiled now.
Yeah. The algorithm starts by showing it to like people who are like you. And that's when it's all positive. And then it like spreads out a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that's when the bad part of the internet comes in.
Yeah. Now you've kind of just grown and developed, I'm not going to say tough skin, but you develop a way to kind of maneuver through those negative comments. You even challenge some of the negative commenters, which I find kind of funny.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, so some of it's you got to get thick skin. Some of it is I have a really good team. I got really good friends. I got a really good husband who, when stuff starts getting mean and personal, they are good about being like, it's time to step away, or it's time to start limiting comments on that post. Or, even in the smaller stuff, they're good about being like, that's not about you. It doesn't say anything about you.
Yeah.
Because that stuff can really get in your head. I posted something last maybe August or September. I don't even remember what it was. Oh, it was about my promotion. It was about me putting on 04, and it ended up on a bad side of the internet, where I was getting called diversity hire and asking how many guys I slept with to make 04.
Wow.
I mean, and I was probably getting 30, 40 comments a day like that.
Damn.
And man, you can't not read that stuff that frequently. And it went on for weeks. It went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I mean, it gets in your head, even though that's clearly not true. You just like, it's rough. And, my husband was like, I know you don't like to, but it might be your time to take a knee. You can either limit the post, you can take it down, but like, you're not winning anything by not blocking these people. You're not winning anything by responding to them. And I think that was a big turning point for me.
Yeah, because
I'm very free with the block button.
Yeah. Why not?
Gotta be.
You know what I'm saying? Like some people some people you could tell by their comments that like they didn't even probably listen to the whole reel.
Right.
They like, with us, for instance, like we put out clips, right? And so a clip of ours would be like 35 seconds to a minute of a 3-hour podcast, right? 35 seconds to a minute of a 3. We're not going to be here for 3 hours. Don't worry about it, nobody. But 35 seconds to a minute of like a 3-hour podcast with context most likely around that clip. Like we said some stuff before it, we said some stuff after, but we might have pulled out like something that was engaging in that clip. And I could tell like some of the people that comment on the clip never listen to the context around it because they might bring up things that like we did talk about or something like that. So when you start to realize that, it's like these people don't, it's social media. So it's grabbing them, it's pulling them in, it's doing this, but they don't care that much about the actual thing that we're creating. Like these people don't care about us or our podcast for us to be like super engaged in their commentary. So like I had to turn off the comments on one of our posts. Only one post we ever made, I turned off the comments. It's recent too. It was a post with Force where he was talking about the NAV admin and some things being recanted in it about pregnancy for women. And the reason, that's the first time I did that. It went against what I thought was like, my morals at one point. It was like, I'm never turning off comments, But then I'm like, nah, I'm turning these comments. But the reason why I wound up turning them off was because it became like this man versus woman fight. Like, do women get pregnant just to get off ships? And that became the argument. You know what I mean? And I've seen every single scenario. I've seen it every single way. And it's not about to be any progression from having this argument. And they like, are you an imbecile? Like they getting crazy. They getting crazy. Are you an imbecile? Are you stupid? Are you? And I'm like, all right, let's do it. Wait. So, so even like to this day, people might get on like, well, how come the most controversial topic or y'all most viewed posts, the comments are, I turn the comments back on now because it's not getting as much the people that were fighting each other, they not fighting each other again right now. But every now and then somebody jumps in there, and all it is like somebody being influenced by something you might have like kind of liked what the person said or like. But when you start going through the comments, you're like, oh, okay. And then you might start commenting based on somebody else. So it just get real crazy. But you handle it well.
It gets messy.
Man. Yeah,
it gets messy.
Well.
I think, and I think some of my basic ground rules for that are like, if I think the person might actually be willing to engage, like they might be willing to learn or have a discussion, I'm happy to try that. And I've had a couple of successes, right? Like I had a meme page, shout out military meme community, who was dragging me for a while. And I finally messaged him and I was just like, hey man, what is it that you want? I don't know who you are. Frankly, I don't care. But I'm an LT at the time. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to help get people into mental health care that need it. I'm trying to help us all do better. I'm trying to inject a little humor, a little joy into the world. And we ended up having a huge back and forth, and we talk all the time now, and they're super supportive. And so sometimes it goes well. Most of the time, not so much. And once it's clear that someone's not there to engage, we don't have to agree, but they're not even there to engage in good faith. That's when that block button comes out, where it's just like, I don't have to give you any space on my platform to say that stuff. And when stuff devolves like that into just being like pissing contests, that's another one where I'm like, okay, no, thank you.
Yeah, because a lot of people want to see if you're genuine, right? They want to see if you're being genuine. So they and when you take the time out to have those conversations, they like, oh man, this person might be, and you can't have them all. Like I'm starting to see that as we grow. Like I can't have like somebody's like, hey, can y'all talk about like how Black sellers, how African American sellers get like punished like at a different rate than other sellers and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, well, it was a study and I did see something in there and we did bring it up on one of our, what episode was it? I'm like, man, we got like 100 episodes. We talk about a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know. Well, can y'all talk about it again? Man. Yeah. He's like, yo, can y'all talk about it? I'm like, we're not going to be the podcast that's all we talk about just because we are African-American hosts. Yeah. We got a diverse military. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. Right. But they just want to see if you're genuine. So my thing there is this. I had an issue with being called an influencer for a little bit, right? It's like, yo, I'm a senior chief who decided to like put a mic on and talk to my friend, right? Because it started out with just me and Damon, and we decided to talk about like some leadership stuff because we felt like it was a disconnect between junior sellers and the Chiefs mess, like almost like this, like we not even human kind of weird detached thing, like we wasn't like E1s before. So I'm like, yeah, let's just talk. Let's talk about the mistakes we made. Let's talk about the lessons we learned, and let's ask more questions than we try to answer. Like we're not sitting on no pedestal on this podcast. Like we want to make mistakes. Like we say things wrong sometimes. We don't we got to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? But so that's why we wanted to do this. Like, just let's be as real as we can. So when I first started, kind of like, damn, okay. So as you start kind of growing, like in the audience, like people just start naturally calling you an influencer. And I had an issue with that because I feel like influencers like did whatever was trendy, right? So I feel like an influencer would take in a small snapshot, like TikTok got like viral hashtags, or they got like viral sound bites, right? So I feel like an influencer would take the sound bite or the hashtag and grow their audience by using that, like whatever is the flavor of the month. So I had an issue with that at first. I am finally warming up to like people. I got a friend of mine like, yeah, you're an influencer, man. Like my boy Aaron. Shout out to Aaron. He just made Command Master Chief. What's up, man? But he like, you're an influencer, bro. You're an influencer. And the craziest thing about this is in real life, I probably am, just throughout the career, dealing with sellers and my experience, I probably am an influencer. So it's like, why am I so resistant against being called an influencer, online? But again, I thought it was because it was like jumping from pillar to post. But I'm assuming you've warmed up to the title of influencer as well, right?
it still sort of gives me like pause. I think for me, the thing about influencers and influencer culture is like, I don't ever want the goal of what I do to be followers, likes, views. I don't ever want it to be that. And I think the thing that gives me pause about being called an influencer is that if what I'm chasing is the title of influencer and the status of being an influencer because I want endorsements, or I want, I want to be able to say that I have this big following to get speeches, or, I don't know, invited on trips or who knows what.
Yeah.
It's not genuine. It's not authentic anymore. Yeah. I make bad content all the time because I make my content for the things I would have wanted to see and hear when I was junior, or the things that I need to hear now, right? I made a reel the other day about how I'm super sad to be deploying, but I'm also really excited to be deploying. And neither of those things makes the other one untrue. I'm sad to be leaving my kids, but I think it's going to be a really cool adventure. And I made that reel because I need to hear that sometimes, that it's okay to be excited about, the ability to go do my job and find meaning in that and be a mom and be good at it. And I had a bunch of people be like, thank you. I have had a hard time letting both of those things be true at once. But overall, the reel didn't perform, quote unquote, particularly well. And that's fine by me. Yeah. Because I'm not there to be an influencer. I'm there to put things out that I think people need to hear. And the only way that I've warmed up to it is that if you really look at it, if the goal is to influence people, then I'm willing to be called an influencer, because I do want to influence people about mental health and about leadership and about, being a parent in the military and things like that.
Yeah. And you're looking at it the same exact way as I'm looking at it. Like, I don't care about, because then it's like almost like you gotta serve. You start to serve, like the McDonald's thing where they was like, hey, McDonald's started to change the menu because everybody wanted something and everybody wanted this. You got to serve. And it's like, I'm not here for that. I'm here to talk. Same reason like you. We made our podcast to speak to, my intention was to make something that I would have wanted to listen to when I was a E5,
Exactly.
So for you and your sphere of influence, right? You've kind of made a way into actually being able to mentor sellers through the social, like one-on-one mentor sellers through social media. I think I heard something like that, right?
Yeah. It's not as formalized as some people. There's a Marine major who has a whole nonprofit now where she matches up mentors and stuff. But I've definitely had a lot of people reach out. And anytime I see those messages, and I'm sad to say, Instagram filters a lot of my stuff, and I get a lot of messages and I can't get to them as much as I wish, as much as I used to, as much as I wish I could. But anytime I see those, I try and establish that relationship. And I've helped get, a bunch of women into submarines. I've talked with, a bunch of Supply Corps women. I've got an LN that I talk to all the time about a lot of different things. And for me, that's the payoff. Having those conversations with people. I have a whole album on my phone of people who've sought mental health because they've heard me talk about it, or they've, found a resource through something I've done. And that's another thing when I get those hate comments is I keep that photo album there to be like, okay, we're moving the needle a little bit in the right direction. And that opportunity to mentor people and reach people outside of my direct chain of command who are looking for a mentor that they identify with, either as a Supply Corps officer, as a woman or a mom or a parent, has been huge. It's been huge for me.
Mm-hmm. So I got a couple questions about Navy, you work Warrior Toughness, right? And working Warrior Toughness, you got to be there in the inception of this thing, right? That's what you were saying. Right, you got to be there and throughout the early stages of the program, right? Not created it.
Early stage.
Yeah, early stage. I know that was Steven Drum and yeah.
Yep.
So and working Warrior Toughness, do you think right now, where what has been about like 8 years or something, six years or something like that?
Yeah.
Do you think that what you all were creating has come to fruition?
So it's been a long time since I've been in the fleet, right? Because I've been at school for a couple of years. So it's hard for me to say. I'll say the sailors the sailors I talked to who were already in the fleet, I don't know that it had the impact that we thought it would. I think people are still kind of unclear on it. Sailor, everyone I know, sailor, people coming out of OCS who got it when they were there, huge for them. Huge for getting them through those kind of initial getting yelled at, getting beat down, sleep deprivation, whatever. Huge for them. And that's where they initially rolled it out. So it makes sense that it's functioning there better. I think it is really hard to put anything that has to do with mental health, mental toughness, anything to do with psychology up against a lot of the attitudes in the military, which is like, just be stoic, just push through it. It's hard to get that. It's hard to get change in that culture.
What are some of the biggest issues that you think we are facing as a Navy?
I think we're facing a huge generational shift. And I don't think that's like a, boomers versus millennials versus Gen Z kind of like Clash of the Titans. I just think that the priorities of a lot of the sailors that, even you've been in 17 years. Uh-huh. So even this, senior leadership, mid-grade like me, people coming in, I think there's a much bigger demand that we look at quality of life, that we look at the way we're treating people, and that we do that well. People aren't going to be silent about it anymore. They're not just going to take it. They're not going to just suffer through and re-enlist because they need the Navy in the same way that they did. We have to make ourselves attractive as an employer. We have to take care of people. We have to offer them, something in return, meaning, training, compensation, all of those things. And I think both internally, changing some of the attitudes that it's going to require to get that change of taking care of people and prioritizing mental health, because we're playing that long game, like we talked about earlier, and getting the funding we need to make the changes from elected officials. I think all of that is one of our biggest challenges right now, because we're at a high op tempo, but we're not quite at, war. And if we did go to war full scale, we have to have the people who are ready. We have to have people who want to be here, who are trained, who are enthusiastic, who really understand the job, not just muddle through. And if we lose sight of that, then we lose sight of a big part of our purpose and our advantage.
How did being on social media impact your normal Navy career? As far as what's some of the pros and cons, and that's experiences and personal. So, for instance, have you ever felt like something was held against you, or like some hatred or something, just because you had the social media profile? And then just personal would be has that put any pressure on? For instance, us doing a podcast, kind of it helped me out. I read more nav admins. I know more because I have to know more because I got to talk about more. So how does that social media imprint affect you?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of negative consequence. I made some people mad down at Fort Hood a couple of years ago, and they called my CO and they were like, "Do you know that your lieutenant is doing this?" And he was like, "Yeah, I know. She's doing a great job." So I had the backing of a really, really cool CO for that. And then I'm trying to think if there's ever another time it's come back in a bad way. I don't think so. I not only mentor people, I've met people who mentor me. They've seen what they've seen what I say, and they're like, I want to help you get this message out. I want to help you get in contact with the right people. I want to use this platform to, share things. So I've gotten some kind of cool opportunities and connections that way. Because people, they know kind of what they're getting. If you don't have to scroll through too many videos to know that like that's pretty much the only flavor I come in. And I think I'm nervous to go back to the fleet because my reputation is probably gonna precede me. And so there'll definitely be a lot of expectations on that. And I'm just hoping I can live up to it. Yeah. And then to your other point, I've set the bar, and now I'm just I gotta try and live up to it every day. And it's possible, right? I've heard nothing but great things about Cat Malota out there, and he makes it look fun, and he leads his crew like it's fun. So it's possible. Just gotta try and channel that energy. And I think you're exactly right about. So I started a Substack recently, so a newsletter that goes out that's about leadership topics. And that's been huge for me because I basically write about the topics that I'm nervous about for my next thing. I say like, what do I think is going to be important? Let me do some research on it. Let me write it up in a quick, easy, digestible format. For everyone else, sure, but mostly for me. Now I'm a little smarter on how I want to be as a leader. And I read more nav admins. I'm deep in Reddit and, Navy Times because I want to know what's going on. I want to understand what sailors are feeling and what's important to people. So yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about the Substack too. That was like my very next question. Is the podcast, is your podcast, is that because you started like a podcast, is that a compliment to the Substack?
Yeah. So it's the same topic every week. So the topic comes out on Thursday with a write-up of some of the skill. And then I bring another leader on to talk about it. Sometimes, with similar views and sometimes with really different views to talk about it on the podcast the next week. So they go together.
So I can't let you go without asking for a book recommendation.
Book recommendation. That's really good. Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart is the one I'm going to throw up there because she goes through, there's like 30 some emotions. I don't know. She's an emotions researcher, but she talks about the importance of having language for your emotions and understanding what emotions are trying to tell you about a certain circumstance.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like warrior toughness bumped up by like 1,000 because warrior toughness, we talk about a couple of emotions, right? Like fear, anger, those are signaling things to you. And when you stop letting them control you and you start saying, if I'm feeling angry right now, what is that trying to tell me about a situation? Then you get to start to choose how you interact with information, with circumstances. And she goes into even more kind of depth on that. And I think as a leader, if you can understand kind of the broader range of what not only your emotions are telling you, but what other people are experiencing, I think it can be hugely impactful with how you interact with people. And then a slightly less touchy-feely book rec range. I can't remember the author right now, but it's really cool. It's about having a diverse interests and making career changes or changing things about your life later, kind of diverging from the normal path and the value in that. And I think that's really valuable for all military members because we do a lot of different things. And I think sometimes we think that sets us back because we aren't just following the golden path, but there's real value in it.
Yeah. And if anybody looking for you, they could find you on, like, if they need some help, some guidance, some mentorship, some advocacy, they could find you on TikTok, Instagram. Is it all the same handle?
Yeah. At @millmama_on-the-run on TikTok and Instagram. And if you have a really pressing need, my messages get filtered and whatever else. I don't know how Instagram decides to do that. So if you really need something or to get in touch, millmama.ontherun@gmail.com is where I take emails for stuff like that. And you're much more likely to get my attention there.
Yeah. Hey, well, look, thanks for kicking it with us. I know you're sick. Life is happening. Life is life. And we all got real things happening. It's for the listeners, it's late when we recording right now. It's like 9:08 at night, Eastern time. Tish is sick right now. Tish got some stuff going on too, y'all. But Man, I'm just happy that we got you, and I hope that we could get you on, again.
Please, anytime. This is awesome.
More conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is great. I've enjoyed not only the clips I've seen on social media, but the episodes of the podcast I've been able to listen to. And I know you're trying to talk to that E5, what you wanted to hear, but I think more officers need to be listening to, because I think it's a perspective that not enough of us hear as much as we should.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Especially short notice.
Yeah.
Made it happen.
No, yeah. Sorry that you sent me a message and I was like, well, I am leaving the country. So
Right.
Spring break will get us all.